Hi, welcome everyone. We'll get this started in just a minute. Okay, welcome everyone. My name is Sarah Carr, and I'm Chief Knowledge Broker for Octo, Open Communications for the Ocean. And we're very glad to have you here today. Today we have with us Tiffany Chan, who's the Destination Program Manager for the Global Sustainable Tourism Council, and Ioannis Pappas, the Director for the Mediterranean region at the Global Sustainable Tourism Council as well. And the abbreviation for that is GSTC, as you can see. And they're going to be speaking today about assessing the sustainability of coastal tourism, tools and lessons learned. Before we get started, I wanted to let everyone know how the webinar will run. First of all, we'll have Ioannis and Tiffany doing a presentation, a formal presentation, and then we'll have plenty of time after that for question and answer. You can send your questions in throughout the presentation part of the webinar, and you can either put them in the chat, and you can make them visible to Tiffany, Ioannis, and I, or to everyone. And you could also send them to the Q&A. Now, the Q&A section in the question, if you type in the question panel, it's a little easier to moderate. But if you put in the chat, if it's something you want feedback from other participants as well, feel free to post it in the chat. And so you can make it available to everyone and get input from a variety of people. You're welcome to use the chat for posting relevant information. We just ask that you keep it on topic and professional. So thank you, Tiffany and Ioannis. We're so glad to have you here today to present. We're excited to learn more about GSTC's work. So I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Sarah.
So, thank you, Sarah. Thank you for inviting us to present the work of GSTC and to share some experience that we have on the subject that is about the sustainability of coastal tourism. We're trying to actually explain a little bit more what exactly is GSTC, what's the mission, what's behind on some actually items that are very important for everyone to know about during this presentation. And we're going to have together with Tiffany the last part of the presentation where we're going to see some tools and lessons that are learned by the project and the experience that we have in GSTC. So let me start. So starting with the very basic one, I think it's very important to have the same baseline of what exactly is sustainable tourism, because we're going to discuss a lot about this this afternoon. So in reality, this is a typical actually definition that someone can find about sustainable tourism, is that the type of tourism, or let's say tourism product, that takes full account of the current, the future, economical, social, environmental impacts. In this discussion, of course, should be on the center the needs of actually the local communities, which is very, very important, together, of course, the industry and the visitors. However, someone has to have in mind always that we need, in this process, in this journey, to minimize the negative and maximize the positive, because in reality, sustainability as a value, someone can say, it's an endless journey that has to take into account that is going to have a target about, for example, certification of a service or whatever is that. However, we need to have in mind that given the situation that we have today, we need to have more positive than negative. That's very, very important part that we have to take into account. And why is that so important? Of course, someone can find the answer related with climate crisis, with many differences that someone can see in his or her daily life. However, there are all these nice surveys that are available right now, for example, from Booking in the last travel predictions. There are many interesting outcomes that says about 70%, 75% actually of the travelers of us would like to travel in the next 12 months in a more sustainable way. Of course, we have to define what exactly is a more sustainable way. But also it's very important that there is a very big demand right now for everyone, and I suppose many of us has the same, let's say, approach about that, to have a kind of offer in the market about sustainable travel, and mostly to have and use infrastructure, for example, accommodation sites that has any kind of certification. That's a very important word that we're going to see later on. In order to actually to go there, to use that, and to be a little bit more, let's say, secure of what kind of sustainable accommodation is going to come. So that's why we're going to discuss more about that, and we will try to connect what exactly GSTC is doing with this target and how this can be achieved. Before going that, I just want to mention that it is obvious that in the last years, it's not just a trend, sustainability, I mean, not only in tourism, but everywhere, I mean, in any part of our life. It's also, I think, a very big industry, let's call it. So there are some actually surveys, one of that can find here the results, that says that until 2027, it's going to be actually a market worth it around 336 billion US dollars. So this is a very big market, and you can imagine why so many people and so many companies, organizations, systems that we're going to present now are really dealing with that. Because as you can imagine, now this is the mainstream. This is not just a trend. So here is now the role and the vision, the mission of GSTC. So why the Global Sustainable Tourist Council is here? Why it was established in 2007 in the global market related with tourism. So Global Sustainable Tourist Council, we name it GSTC, is managing the GSTC criteria. So take into account that we have criteria in place in order to justify what is sustainable and what is not. Where in travel and tourism, this is our, let's say, field. And also it is managing this global, actually, sustainable tourist criteria in order to be, let's call it, in the right direction at least, and to treat it as it is, it should be, and we are going to discuss more about that. At the same time, another role that was not so important many years ago, but now it is very critical, is providing international accreditation. It's the only tourism-related accreditation body about sustainability. Yes, for sustainable tourism certification body. So in this, let's say, mission, you can see management, you can see standards about sustainable tourism, you can see accreditation process, and you can see certification bodies. So in this paragraph, you see all, in reality, ecosystem of what we are going to discuss as the role of GSTC in this ecosystem of sustainable tourism. So one of the most important items that gives the boost, let's say, to GSTC is the membership program. So we are not alone as an organization, as an NGO that works since 2007 in this direction. We have together with us in that mission many big, small, less or more important actually contributors as member to GSTC. You can see here OTAs, you can see here big hotel chains, you can see here most of the big NGOs that work on the environment, biodiversity, and many others. You can see representation right now, very strong representation by NTOs, National Tourist Organization, or ministries, so the public sector. So it is obvious here that this mission is supported by the private and public sector, which is the key in order to see how important is this journey towards sustainable tourism. And starting with that, I would like to justify that we are going to have the right connection with the real challenge that we have in these years and the years to come about what we're discussing today. So let's actually determine what is certification, because around us every year, every time, every hour, we are discussing or hearing or using products or services that are certified, or they are claiming that are certified. So what exactly is certification? So certification is a voluntary third-party assessment through an audit of a tourist enterprise or destination for conformity to a standard. So here it's a very important thing to understand that in order to have a certification, we have to have at least two very important things. One is to have a standard that we are going to be audited as an entity, as a service, as a product. And secondly, to have a third party that we call certification body that's going to be transparent, impartial with us in order finally to have a certification. So certification helps to verify claims, because we are claiming, or you are claiming, or let's say a product is based on claims that is green, is actually recycled material, is more sustainable than the mean, let's say, volume in the market. So this is very, very important. Another important thing is that GSTC is not doing certifications. It is not doing this process. We are managing the standards, the gold standards, the basic standards in the global market, and we are accrediting the bodies that are making this certification to the market, to the hotels, to the destinations, and we're going to see that. This is very critical. And why we are dealing so much with certification? First of all, because we're talking about verification of claims. Think about your water. Think about the car that you are driving. Think about you are going to a doctor. So there is a claim that this is a more sustainable car, or you have, let's say, something to do with the operation of, let's say, a service, or let's say a professional. So verifying the claims is the process that certification is one very important part of it. Secondly, provides discipline for improvement. So it is not only to start and go to another direction to have something certified, but also you have, let's say, the progress and the pathway towards improvement. And of course, which is very, very important also, and I think most of us were asking about that, facilitate market access. So as certified, let's say, hotel or travel agent or even a destination, you can have a better market access, you can have better penetration, you are going to be more, let's say, unique and more important for the market. So it is an investment, it's not a cost, it's not a liability, it's an asset, finally. So let's start, let's say, see what exactly are these criteria that we are talking about. First of all, we have to identify here that on the left side of this table, we have different parts, different subsector of tourism that someone can find global standards on that. So you can see about hotels, tour operators, destination management, aviation, cruise, MICE, attraction, food and beverage, and other businesses. The most important thing here is that we are tried, and I think this is, again, for the whole ecosystem around GSTC, that GSTC is providing these global standards like in hotels, in tour operators, in destinations, in MICE right now in 2024, we have released these new criteria, attractions also by the end of 2024. And now we are under development of the global standard about food and beverage and of course sustainability connected. So it's very important to see that the role of GSTC is becoming broader and broader. We are covering most of the subsectors of tourism in the sense of sustainability. And I think that's very, very important because think about that until today, there wasn't so, let's say, global coverage of standard in order to become, let's say, a market, a subsector that has standard to refer to. So another very important thing that someone has to have in mind is that in these standards that we call it global standards, there are, of course, criteria, there are indicators behind criteria, but also all these can be divided in 4 very important pillars. Of course, we have the environmental pillar, we have the social economic pillar, but in GSTC, we are separating and we're identifying the importance of cultural pillar. So we're talking about criteria about culture heritage, and many other things around that. And of course, we have a specific pillar about sustainable management, which is very, very important because management is number 1. We cannot have anything about the implementation and the monitoring, the reporting, and everything behind the other criteria and pillars if we don't have the proper management of sustainability. On the left side, you see the dates, actually the years of releasing different kind of criteria sets from GSTC, like hotels and tour operators, destination criteria, then the hotels and tour operators, which are the private sector criteria, we call it industry criteria. This year we released MICE criteria and attraction criteria. These criteria, first of all, are free of charge. Anyone can download it from our website and also have been translated, most of them, to many different languages in order to be accessible from anyone. And of course, using these standards, like I said, we have the certification role, we have also training, education, awareness target, which is also very important because trying to create a more sustainable ecosystem in tourism, and not only, if you don't have the proper training and awareness inside the stakeholders, then you are going to conclude in a very limited results. Of course, regulatory calls and legal compliance. Another thing which is very important, measurements. If you don't measure, you cannot actually manage that, and you cannot become better and better. And finally, the market access that we have discussed before. Let's go from standard to who and how someone can really use the standards in a proper way. We have to identify here something very important. Like I said, the organization that can actually deal with this auditing using the standards has to be really capable based on specific ISO processes and standards related with auditors, related with the management of the audit and many other things. We call that process from, let's say, zero verification about, let's say, the process of assessment that we call it, or audit, to first party, second party, third party, and really robust, let's say, certification by transparent, third party, accredited certification body. These are the levels of assurance. The highest assurance that someone would like to have, the better result and most, let's say, rigorous result we are going to have. This is an important step to decide how we are going as a company, as a hotel, would like to go to that market, because things are changing gradually. In the next year to come, the issue against greenwashing is going to be very important, and we're going to see some examples about that. So the higher the level in these stages, the better it is. So on one side, like I said, GSTC has these global standards that are delivering also with the open, actually, consultation. Global experts are participating in the creation of these standards and actually the revision of that. However, on the other side of the market, we have many other standards because the market, like we said, is huge. So the process that we have designed in order to minimize standards that are not actually really robust in order to be in this market and provide the process of sustainability and recognition actually on these standards. We call it this process of acknowledgement as recognition. So in reality, in the market right now, you can see many different standards that can be recognized by GSTC, which is what? It's a process of checking if the standard that is under recognition process covers and not actually destroyed, let's call it, every criterion of the GSTC respective, let's say, standard. For the hotels, there are recognized, GSTC recognized standards for hotels. For destinations, the same. If we go to the next level about certification bodies, then we have also certification bodies that are actually evaluated, assessed by GSTC based on manuals. Everything here, the recognition and the accreditation are based on specific manuals. So these certification bodies are following the process of intensive review and confirmation of auditing and certification process and system and everything. And these two things are giving the ability of these standard owners, but also certification bodies to have the market, we call it GST market access, so to be actually disseminated via our network and ecosystem in order to be inside this framework that we call it GSTC framework. So if someone would like to illustrate this universe, we have the tourist services, so actual destinations, travel agents, hotels, accommodation, MICE, now attractions. In the middle, we have the certification bodies that are accredited. And on the left side, we have the accreditation body about sustainable tourism, which is GSTC. So this is more or less the universe. And in the middle, of course, also there are these actually recognized standards. Some of these GSTC recognized standards you can see here in different actually subsectors. So it could be for hotels, it could be for travel agents, it could be for destinations. It could be also covering geographically a specific area of a region, of an area for Europe, for global or whatever, all right? And it could be also a national recognized standard, so only for national reasons. And also we have GSTC accredited certification bodies for destinations, for a specific geographical also implementation, and also for a specific subject like destination, like say tour operators, hotels, in the near future attractions, and MICE. So this is the universe that we are talking about. I just want to mention here with one slide that everything that we're talking about is very important to identify, and we have already done this, a very extensive training program, because, you know, it is becoming more and more complicated, not even from the visitor point of view, which is very, very difficult to understand sometimes. So that's why our website is trying to give all the necessary information about the traveler, but also about the user, which is the hotels, the travel agents, the MICE, attraction sites, and the destination. So for each different case, there are specialized design training courses in order to give awareness, to create awareness, but also to give the necessary skills to professionals also to be prepared about these markets, talking about businesses, talking about hotel courses, private or custom training. We have also auditors training and many other specific focus subjects like accessible and inclusive travel services and many others. So I really invite you to go and see what is more, let's say, practical and useful for you. So let's go to see some examples of this implementation about all the things that I have described. And I'm going to start here, first of all, with the implementation of frameworks in different countries. You can see here many different countries. I have to say that right now we're around 40 different nations that are represented in our ecosystem, even with NTO, National Tourist Organizations, or Ministry of Tourism or other entities. So you can see here from many different areas of the world, and we can see some examples about this. This is from actually Norway. This is a very important program that have introduced on a top-down approach from the national level, a destination program based on GSTC criteria. It has many things inside that program. You can find many information on Innovation Norway about Sustainable Destination Program. And this is a very interesting progressive program because there are many things that are happening in the last years in this program, and they are delivering now also not only for destination, but also for the private sector tools in order to become more sustainable towards even a sustainable certification. A next program that is also very important for us is the Singapore Hotel Sustainability Roadmap that has some kind of obligations to the hotel room stock. So it was an obligation of sustainability certification by 2025, about 60%. And someone can see many things that still happening and are going to happen in this country, actually, because now the country as a country is certified as well as, let's say, a destination like it is, but also a lot of facilities, hotels, actually smaller inside the destination like Sentosa. We had the opportunity to see all these developments during our last GSTC Global Conference this November in Singapore. The next program, which is also very important, and I think one of the most interesting developments globally, is the Turkey national program, which is based completely in GSTC criteria in every different subsector of tourism. We have acknowledged this program because everything is based on our framework, from the criteria that they have developed, the certification bodies that are accredited by GSTC, and many other things. So they have designed a pathway towards, let's say, stages until 2030 for total compliance with the criteria for every subsector, hotels, tour operator, and destinations. This is the program, and it is very interesting. What is really the different thing about Turkey program compared with other programs around the globe? The difference is, for example, the private sector is obliged to have specific steps towards specific, let's say, target until 2030, which is the stage 3. You can see on the bottom. So stage 1 and stage 2 are, let's say, compliance. We call it verification check against some percentage of the total criteria of the national criteria set, while in 2030, every entity is obliged to be certified by third-party actually audit. So for a third-party certification body accredited. And this is very important because, as you can see, it is connected, this obligation, by the license. So it is a completely top-down approach. However, it seems to be very successful until now because they have 22,000 entities in Turkey that has to follow these steps. Until today, which is the ending point in 2025, they have already almost 1,500 certified entities and almost 18,000 verified entities in stage one. So it's a very big program. They are running everything together with the private sector. The private sector is there together with the government and the TGA, which is the NTO of Turkey about tourism, to work together towards a common target, which is absolutely incredible in a market that until today we had, for the last, let's say, 10, 15 years, only 16,000 awarded, labeled, or certified make the title all around the globe. So these guys are going to have 22,000 fully certified by accredited certification bodies until the end of 2029. That's very interesting. Another system that is using GSTC framework is the well-known WTTC, World Travel and Tourism Council Hotel Sustainability Basic System. It's a very important also system because it follows the same approach. So they are using as a starting point the GSTC criteria, specific criteria, 8 criteria from the industry criteria, so about hotels. And they are creating awareness training in order to go to the next stage, that's going to be the advanced criteria, that's going to be also again fully complying with some of GSTC criteria. So you see that this framework, we call it global, and it is global because it gives this approach. So let's focus a little bit more about what is let's say, the subject of this presentation. So connected with coastal tourism. I found, I think, very, very informative this slide. I took it from this source. What about coastal tourism typologies, so cruise, beach, urban, eco, and boating? And most of the threats that are connected with, so we see supply chain, we see a lot of things connected with environmental issue. Don't forget about urbanization. Don't forget about biodiversity behind, and many things that are very, very important in this discussion. So towards that direction, I'm going to start from cruise, because we have in this subsector a lot of collaboration, especially with specific cruise lines like Royal Caribbean, together with WWF. Back in 2019, there was a discussion, actually a commitment, in order to use only GSTC certified, so entities for DMCs. I mean, in tour operators on the field, on the shore, using only this kind of certification on the packages from Royal Caribbean. This is a very important program. Is working, is operational. Many tour operators that are working together with cruise are inside this program. It's very, very successful. A second one is, let's say, we are very active on participating on discussion, reviewing, and contributing in reports about, let's say, different aspects, like, let's say, this report from Blue Tourism Initiative that is working very close with biodiversity issues, coastal marine tourism, and many other things. This is an example that we have worked together that year, promoting and actually evaluating this policy paper with specific results about regulatory and governance gaps, collaboration, that is very number one, I think, issue in this market, national registry gap, monitoring and reporting of issues. We have found this outcome also in many other activities that we have connected with coastal tourism. And of course, implementation of technology, especially clean renewable technologies in many different parts of this chain of product in tourism connected with coastal tourism. Another collaboration, which is also very important for us, is together with MedCruise the Association of Mediterranean Cruise Ports. We're working together with MedCruise in order to support the creation of their vision about the mission on the future about sustainable ports and how this can happen until 2050. We're discussing about, again, issues related to certification of ports and many other things that are under development now in the project that we have together. We call it Scale, and it's a very, very important project that we're almost finished that in the next months to come. Another very interesting initiative that we have participated was developed under European Commission funding together with Deloitte and Ramboll some years ago. However, it was very important for us to let's say, to contribute on this report, which is Good Practice for Sustainable Cruise Tourism. The interesting thing here is that it has been developed a very important self-assessment tool about ports using the GSTC framework. So a port could use this framework in order to self-evaluate based on the criteria, downscale actually criteria from the destination criteria from GSTC in order to find challenges, opportunities, to see about missing points on infrastructure, managing visitor flows, and many other things that are connected with that. Another project that we have contributed, and I am really inviting you to see some very interesting outcomes. It is almost closing to the end of this project. It's a co-funding project by European Commission. It's called Eco-Cruising Future. We have used the methodology and the destination criteria of GSTC in order to create a very robust process of identifying good practices on coastal areas and tourism. So these good practices that we have, let's say, used this actually criteria, have developed a pool of practices that someone can find inside this project deliverables. Some of them are related with big data handling, protection, of course, environment and biodiversity, sustainable tourist growth, and actually well-being of local communities. This is very important because by the end of the day, the corporation of all this supply chain, like I said, but also the well-being of local communities, it's a very important part of this discussion. And some recommendation that someone can see and use also for coastal and marine tourism product, outcome of this process that we follow using this GSTC framework is based on strengthening regulatory framework, promoting sustainable tourist practices, enhancing collaboration and partnerships, adopting the national standard for sustainable tourism, implementing economical incentives and regular monitoring system. Monitoring system, like I said, it's a very critical point outcome of our, let's say, activities, developing more sustainable itineraries through stakeholder involvement, and emphasizing the importance of certification and digital tools for capacity building. Capacity building also on the stakeholders in these coastal areas products is very critical. Closing my part of the presentation, I would like to share some very initial thoughts, outcome from a service that we have for specific actually targets. Tiffany is going to discuss more about that. We call destination assessment against GSTC destination criteria. Like you can see here, these are, let's say, connected with coastal tourism activities, Heraklion in Greece, Corfu, Athens, connected also with, let's say, the Riviera of Attica in Greece. Also, Tiffany is going to discuss more about that. I'm going to emphasize only just to show you some initial results from the assessment of Dubrovnik. Assessment is not a certification, it's an assessment from experts called assessors against the criteria. So you can see here in destination pillar and environmental pillar, different criteria. By the color, you can find here the evaluation, more red more critical, more risk areas they are. So this was done in 2019. Monitoring, crisis emergency management, sustainability standards implementation, environmental risk evaluation, greenhouse gas emission programs, and wastewater were the risk areas for Dubrovnik. 3 years afterwards, we have done the reassessment, and it was very, very interesting what we have seen in these destinations. You can see this criteria A1, A3, so management, reporting, standards, crisis management, sensitive environments, D1, which is also very important for the case of coastal areas, species exploitation, solid waste. We can see here with the reassessment, the massive improvement of the performance of the destination. So what I would like to show and share with you right now, it's very important to have this system based on standard evaluating the performance of coastal areas and identifying risk areas that then the destination management organization and all the governments behind can develop strategy and action plan. Closing my presentation, I would like just to share a couple of slides about the market access. Everything that we're discussing here, it's about to develop and demonstrate and implement action plans in order to become more sustainable. So many different parts of the supply chain of tourist products, like big hotel chains like TUI, have done this, taking a very big and important part of the market related with actually recognizing the importance of sustainability. Of course, nowadays, it's not just like some years ago. Many of the OTAs, the big ones like Trip.com, Booking.com, Traveloka, and many others are sharing this information. This is a very important thing because our era is the era of information and big data, even in coastal areas and many other areas having this extensive tourism or not so much extensive tourism activity. This is what it, let's say, combines everything because, like I said, the greenwashing is something that is very, very important right now. Identified, there's a lot of legislation that is coming. One of the most important ones is coming from the European Commission about green claims and how we are going to deal with that. And of course, there's a lot of things to do about that, the whole ecosystem that is going to be based in data. Closing my presentation, I would like to say that data in any kind of product like coastal, like mountain, like urban, is based, it should be based on data, KPIs, use of standards, and try to make it more connected with real life, educate your people, put inside, of course, technology, AI, platforms, evaluation in order to create the most appropriate framework about evaluating of your performance. And with that, I'm going to give the floor to actually Tiffany to continue and close our presentation.
Thank you, Ioannis. If you can just head to the next slide there. So Ioannis briefly talked about destination assessments. So I'm not going to go too deep into it, but it's essentially a tool that policymakers and destination managers use to identify areas of risk and areas of opportunity in adherence to the GSTC destination criteria. As we mentioned, it's not certification, although oftentimes a destination might want to do an assessment just to see where they are at, and kind of get an idea of the areas that they really need to focus on. Here I just have a few different assessments that we've done in the last year in Kotor, Tahiti and French Polynesia, Petra in Jordan, and as Ioannis mentioned, Dubrovnik. And we also have most of the reports are public and publicly available. Some destinations like to keep them private and use as an internal tool, but you can see the reports on our website and get an idea of how those work. Next slide, please. And so something we have here is called the Destination Stewardship Report. This is a collaboration and an ongoing partnership with two other organizations. the Destination Stewardship Center and CREST, Center for Responsible Travel. We release 3 publications a year, and we really just like to focus on featuring destinations that have really embraced effective and holistic management. We take the opportunity to highlight practical insights and lessons learned from destinations around the world. And it's really just a tool and a piece of resource to give destination and tourism practitioners an opportunity to learn from others. And every year we take all those reports and we put them into a destination stewardship yearbook. And you can subscribe to the report on our website, and the yearbook, this year's yearbook will be released in the next few weeks online as well. And next slide. And then the last thing that I wanted to touch on is the Destination Stewardship Starter Kit. So this starter kit was developed by our Destination Stewardship Working Group. Our focus was to really create a tool to support destinations in their transition towards a stewardship approach. And so the 10 steps that are outlined here are really meant to serve as a guide to meet the destination, regardless of where they're at in their sustainability journey. It's not mandatory to follow them in any specific sequence. And we, through the working group, we translated the starter kit into French, Spanish, Greek, and German, and this is also available on our website. And I'll drop a link in the chat as well. And that's it from our end. We'll jump into Q&A. You can see I've left a couple links to our social media and our website. And if you have any additional questions that we don't get through in the Q&A, I will also leave my email in the chat, and feel free to message us anytime.
Great. Thank you so much, Tiffany. Thank you so much, Ioannis. This was a fantastic overview of GST's work, and the standards, and no, it's great to get this overview. So we do have some questions, and we'll dive into those now. And if people want to send in more questions, you can post them in the chat or in the Q&A. And if we are not able to get to all the questions, I'll make sure that Ioannis and Tiffany are able to see them afterwards. So one question we'll get started with, is GSTC doing any work in relation to assessing carrying capacity for tourism activities within a defined geographic area as a more area-based approach to assessing sustainability of tourism in a locality? Is this something the sustainable destination and national programs you mentioned are looking at?
Would you like Tiffany to answer? Would you like me to go ahead?
Go ahead, Ioannis.
Yes. So we're talking about carrying capacity. That's a very, very important part of what destinations should do as, let's say, a preparation process in order to identify their needs, identify what is really the carrying capacity about the infrastructure, about the resources, about many things. The carrying capacity approach is, as you know, a sometimes very complicated scientific issue. It is something that is needed inside the criteria of GSTC about destinations in order to be in line actually with the mindset of the criteria. It's a very important part. In many times during the assessment that we have done, we are not, let's say, we don't find that in place. However, this is a critical point because it is needed in order the destination to be aware about what exactly is this capacity, how it is addressed inside the strategic documentation, how they have developed a strategy about tourist product in their destination if they don't have that. So it's, I think it's very, very important to have it in place. However, our methodology and our, let's say, process is not creating a carrying capacity. It is searching to see if carrying capacity is there, how they have used it, how they have implemented the outcomes inside a strategic document like Sustainable Tourism Strategy and Action Plan, for example. So that's why we are really, let's say, trying to find this kind of documents, not only carrying capacity, there are many others, but it's not something that we are, let's say, delivering somehow from our work.
Okay, thank you, Ioannis. In this next question, there's a list of things, so I can repeat parts of it later. So the question is, some of the critical assessments needed for coastal sustainable tourism include climate change net zero plans, nature-based solutions for coastal resilience, building design that is both energy efficient and disaster reduction oriented, sustainable seafood, and reduction of plastics. So how is GSTC addressing these issues? How are GSTC assessments addressing these issues that are particularly important to coastal tourism?
Yeah. Can I take that also,
Yes,
Tiffany?
please. Yep.
All right. So let's agree on the following. First of all, the assessment, but also the criteria that is based the assessment on are, let's say, management process related. So these criteria are more on the process in order to achieve some kind of target that you have to put. So that's why you are not going to see, for example, let's have a number of how much CO2 emissions per guest night should the destination have, or what is, let's say, the limit of that. What we are searching, or let's say, is the mindset behind the criteria, for example, from destinations, and for the coastal, but it's the same thing for every kind, is that we would like to see how a destination have developed initiatives, how they are dealing with, for example, wastewater or solid waste targets. What are the targets? How they are reporting that? How they are creating financial means that coming from tourist towards to that kind of projects. So we are not going to ask for the number that we are asking to have. We are trying to see how they have developed this kind of targets, how they are doing that, if they are compliant with the national, local, or international legislation, because, for example, reduction of plastics or anything related with climate change activities are really connected with the national agreements that the national level or even in the regional level have. So this is a very important thing. And this is a very big difference if someone sees other standards that could be recognized by GSTC that are more quantitative in their approach, because it is very important to create the framework. For example, in the program of Turkey, I can say that there is a collaboration between the public and private sector. So the public sector is creating the framework, and the private sector is coming with the knowledge from academy also to create the specific targets. We are not, let's say, an organization that should put the targets themselves on the table, but via the methodology, we see if the framework of setting, make the necessary consultation with stakeholders, creating a monitoring and reporting system, implementation of training, all this kind of stuff are kept and operating in a very good way, not perfect, let's say. And how this is financed, how this is connected with tourist incomes, how all this ecosystem is operational in a good way. So this is the mindset behind the GSTC criteria, and that's why are applicable worldwide and all in different kinds of tourism types or activities or even sizes. I mean, we have run the same methodology in Kotor, that it is 32,000 people, and the same methodology in Athens, which is 700,000. The same methodology.
Okay, thank you so much, Ioannis. And another question, I'm sure a lot of the, as we've discussed, sort of the people who participate in Octo's networks, many of them are coming from environmental NGOs. And so from that perspective, I wanted to read another question. We are an environmental nonprofit that is located on an island and a protected area. We have started to work more and more on sustainable tourism, creating awareness on the subject. What would we have to do to be able to certify businesses like hotels and restaurants? So what can the like small environmental NGOs do in
Yeah. I
um,
think
for
I
promoting
think
this work?
Tiffany could describe in reality the stewardship kit, start kit, because inside this cycle that you have seen, there are specific steps that someone has to follow in order to become gradually ready for the whole, let's say, destination, but also for the private sector.
Yeah, so the steps in the starter kit are, I mean, it was built for destinations, but within that you can find steps to engage with industry. And I think one step that we outlined is to engage with stakeholders through capacity building. So things like training. In the past, destinations have used our training program, particularly the flagship course, the Sustainable Tourism course, and conducted group trainings for tour operators and for hotels to really build on their knowledge of sustainable tourism, but really understanding the criteria in detail and also understanding how to implement these steps and these criteria in their daily operations. So I think training and capacity building and just looking at that as a way to really engage with stakeholders. But through the starter kit, you can find other steps that would be relevant as well and what others have done.
Okay, thank you so much, Tiffany, and thank you, Yana.
Mhm.
That and I think that addresses one of the other questions we had about um, how to get involved from the environmental NGO side. Another question that came in, to what extent is GSTC involved in environmental impact assessments, potential developments?
Actually, we are not engaged in that part. However, the existence of environmental impact assessment in the management plan and the legislation compliance and identification of necessary and important items inside the design of the activities and actually the tourist products is a very essential part in the assessment and finally on the compliance of a destination in that. Also, you can find it on the private sector, let's say the industry criteria related with hotels, with travel agents if they have some facilities. So it is part of the compliance, but also the necessary preparation of the private and public sector in order to be, let's say, in line with the legislation, but also identification of the major impact based on the activity that is foreseen or it's already in place.
Okay, thank you, Giannis. Another question that had been sent in prior to the webinar, that I think will be relevant to a lot of our participants here. Are there any sort of communities that you see that are bringing together the tourism industry and conservation together to share knowledge? Are there any sort of effective communities that people can look at joining to be part of these discussions?
I think in cases like Tahiti and many others that, let's say, the conservation item is so critical for the destination. It's something that is becoming more and more vital for a destination to be really in practice sustainable. So I think depends from the type and the specific destination. For example, in Athens or let's say in other big areas, this is not the essential part. But if you go, for example, in Kotor, which has a very fragile, it's a basin actually, the Boca one. It's a very fragile and sensitive natural environment, coastal. with very, very big impacts from actually from cruise lines and the urbanization around the area. This is a very important part. I mean, the criteria are asking in reality proves that you have developed a monitoring system, you have done all the impact assessments, you are trying to do with initiative together with the private and public sector all the necessary measures in order to, let's say, to protect the environment and make any kind of restoration of any impact that is out of let's say, of the target. So I think it depends from the type and the case. However, if you see in our criteria how many actually criteria we have about biodiversity, about cultural heritage, about all the connection between them, I think it's very balanced in the sense that it is taken into account. It's not only for tourism, it's not only for biodiversity, it's for both development. And if we're talking about, let's say, also parks, natural parks, and many others, now the attractions criteria are also very specific for these cases in order to go even farther than the general destination criteria that someone can use.
Okay, thank you so much, Ioannis. We're at the end of our time. We had a couple other questions we weren't able to get to, but I'll make sure that Ioannis and Tiffany, that you're able to see those questions. I just say thank you so much for being here today and presenting to us. We really appreciate it. It's great for us to know about this, about the standards, so that we can do our part in promoting their usage. And thank you to everyone who was able to attend. If there's future webinars you want to see, you can email me at sarah@octagroup.org. And thank you for your time and attendance. And as I mentioned earlier, the webinar recording will be posted on Octo's website under the webinars tab later today, and you can forward the recording to any colleagues who might be interested that weren't able to attend. So thank you so much, Ioannis and Tiffany. We so appreciate you coming on today to share all this work with us. And we look forward to all the developments and future standards and seeing what they are in the future.
Thank you, Sarah, for having us.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
And thank you, everyone, for joining.
Okay. And we'll see you all again soon. Okay. Goodbye,
Thank
everyone.
you. Bye.
Bye. Bye-bye.